absolute pleasure to be here at Blue Earth Summit. I'm in block blue, you can see, getting right into the theme of things. But we're here to talk about the money, and we're going to need a lot of it. Some estimates around 150 trillion of total investment for us to transition to a net zero economy. That will require annual investments to quadruple from current measures, current levels. So obviously for businesses, and a lot of businesses who need to invest that capital, one of the challenges they have is, how do I go green without going into the red? And that is where finance will come in to support. And of course, we're in an international race for capital. From a UK perspective, we have the Inflation Reduction Act in America, we have EU Green Deal, we have lots of competing geographies for that capital. So it is important that from a UK perspective, we think about how do we ensure that we have that capital here in the UK. As I said, my name is Rob Durpel, I'm from EY. We probably know us for measurement, and of course the old adage, you can't improve what you don't measure. So we do a lot of measurement, and then we help our clients on their journeys to more sustainable business models. But I'm delighted we've got a fantastic panel for you today. Let me quickly introduce. On my left, we've got Kate Rogers, who is a global head of sustainability at Cazenove Capital, an award winner for her work with Treasury to establish the Charity Authorised Investment Fund. Kate holds a number of trusteeships, has volunteered in refugee camps, and is very passionate an advocate for refugee rights, diversity, equality, and inclusion. Welcome, Kate. And then we're very pleased to also have Anne-Marie Thomas, who's the Chief Executive of the Green Finance Institute, where he spent over 20 years in investment banking and was awarded her OBE for services to green banking, heavily involved in the creation of TCFD and co-chaired the launch of TNFD, which I think you just saw on the video. Welcome, Anne-Marie. And lastly, at the end there, Bevis Watts, who's a CEO of Triodos UK. Bevis has spent his whole career working in sustainability in both the public, private and voluntary sectors. Prior to leading Triodos, he was a chief executive of Avon Wildlife Trust, and last year published his first book, River Journey, about his discovery of wild beavers in the River Avon. If we have time, we will get there and talk about those. Right. Why don't we kick off? And Anne-Marie, I might just start with you. As we said, you lead the Green Finance Institute, and perhaps we can just start with maybe a definition of green finance. Is it the same as normal finance? How does it differ? And maybe a little bit about the role of the Green Finance Institute.
Well, thanks ever so much, Rob, and good morning, everybody. When I first started the Green Finance Institute, I got asked this question a lot, and so I came up with my own definition, which was green finance is the application of climate science to financial decision making. I've since revised that definition a little because climate is so intrinsically linked with nature, as you would have seen from the TNFD. Sorry, is this making a funny noise? Here we go. As you would have seen from the TNFD video just now, that I think it's the application of all environmental science to financial decision making. And by trying to define it that way, we're actually highlighting this isn't just about risk. This is also about opportunity. It's about making sure that the realities of what the climate scientists are telling us and the environmental scientists are telling us actually infiltrate all the decision making that we make in financial services. And that includes all types of finance, not just commercial finance, but also philanthropic capital. It also means government, public sector money. It means the entire financial ecosystem. And how does it differ to traditional finance? So that's a really good question. Green finance is not some sort of magic money. It still needs to align with the principles of traditional finance. A green loan, you still have to pay your interest, you still have to pay your principal, you still have to provide security. But what we are starting to see, and this is a very encouraging sign, in speaking with some of the mainstream financial institutions, they're starting to recognize that the transition to a net zero future and a nature positive future is so inevitable because it is based on science, that they're starting to realize those are the clients that they want to be working with, those are the transactions that they want to be leaning into, all the main financial organizations have signed up to net zero targets by 2050, and so are going to have to transition and start pivoting their businesses. So I'm starting to have conversations with mainstream financial organizations who are saying, actually, we're starting to take a slightly different view of the risk that we're willing to take. Just starting to shift our risk appetite a little bit if something is green versus if it isn't. And I'm sure we'll get onto a discussion later, Rob, about how important it is that we can define what we mean by what is green, because currently that is not a regulated space, there is not a standard definition, and it is leading, unfortunately, to greenwashing and a lot of fear of mucking up, which is stifling innovation in the finance sector, but I'm sure we'll get onto that in a second. And very quickly, you kindly gave me an opportunity to say what we do at the Green Finance Institute. We're 4 years old. I was very honoured to be the founding chief executive. We were initially seed funded by government. We are a group of almost 60 bankers at this point who are no longer constrained by the sort of monthly revenue targets and different constraints that you have when you work in mainstream finance, so that we can actually tackle some of those really knotty, multi-stakeholder, multi-year challenges of how do we mobilize more capital into the real economy? How do we actually move away from commitments and targets and actually get more money into decarbonizing our homes, get more money into decarbonizing our road transport or our aviation fuel, or how do we get more money both from government and from mainstream financial organizations into nature-based solutions and into emerging markets? Obviously, that covers quite a broad range of things, so I'll leave it there, but it's all on our website, and I'd be delighted if you'd take a look. Thanks, Rob.
Brilliant. Bevis, maybe coming to you. So, as I said, you lead what is often referred to as one of the most sustainable banks in the world. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about Triodos, I got it wrong, Triodos Bank, and how it differs from traditional banks or banks on the high street.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. And if you're interested in comparing banks, one of the very positive developments actually is that Which last week produced their first ever analysis of current accounts in the UK. They did green savings before, but you can also look at Ethical Consumer Magazine, a league table called Mother Tree that's all about carbon emissions, and a campaign called Bank.Green, which is all about switching between the different options. So it's great that we're starting to rate and have that debate about which are offering different sustainability propositions, really. In terms of what Triodos does, we've been around for 43 years, and it was set up very much with the premise of trying to support creating a more sustainable and fair society. So that's what we try to do in everything we do in the business. So we're renowned for setting the highest minimum standards in what we won't lend to, but that's not really the point. Saying you do least harm is not really what we're about. It's much more about positive impact. So we open source and articulate that in terms of how we go about assessing everything that we lend to having positive environmental, social, cultural impact. And we take a more holistic view than it just being about carbon emissions, net zero, etc. We always have. And I thought David Olusoga did a fantastic job of articulating that intersection of social and environmental issues earlier, which is very aligned to our thinking. To bring that to life, you know, we then sort of target our risk appetite, to Rhianne Marie's point, and our resources to try and operate in new and emerging sectors. So one of the pioneers we've supported, I could see exhibiting just out the corner of my eye coming through here, called Fish Tech Marine. Some of you may have heard of Ecotricity. We financed their first ever wind turbine. So we're renowned for that catalytic sort of work, but we do a much broader range of things as well. So it's partly about finance change, and then partly what we do is to change finance. So we try to be a reference point to prove this can be different, and that you can run a profitable, successful, growing business with 22 billion of assets under management and 750,000 customers to try and say to the wider sector, you know, that there is a different model.
And for being right in the heart of Bevis, what would you say, what's your view on the current status of green finance in the UK? Like, have we got the capital flows in place? Are we on track? Are we attracting the right level of capital to support what we need to do as a country?
No, I think we're in a very nascent phase, really. There's lots of good people who work in banking. There's lots of great initiatives, including the Green Finance Institute. So we shouldn't sort of dismiss all of that. So there is the good, there's the bad, there is greenwashing, there's people sort of presenting things as really game-changing or delivering things that frankly aren't that useful or aren't really a shift in what they've historically done. But I suppose the ugly truth in it for me is we are so slow in addressing this in the financial sector. And I first worked in sustainable finance nearly 20 years ago, and the concepts that exist today around stranded assets and banks financing things that you won't ever be able to realize in fossil fuels, they've been around for that length of time. And we started to talk about regulating banks and other financial institutions for climate risk years ago, and I was always worried the reflex would be very slow. And so the theory was if you regulate them for the risk and get them to own the risk, they will then start to do something about it in what they're financing. But that reflex is so unbelievably painfully slow, we're not seeing that at anything like the speed. So I would advocate really for green finance to take off and for the flows of capital to shift. We have to put more red lines around banking and regulate in a much greater way than simply that risk management approach, which unfortunately has become absolutely vital and critical because now we are dealing with very real risks affecting banks' loan books and asset portfolios.
And we'll come on to that, I think, just in a moment around how do we maybe use regulation to drive that change a bit more quickly. But Kate, coming to you, so you lead sustainability in Cazenove Capital. You're advising your clients, be they private or public individuals, businesses, etc., pension plans, etc. Can you explain a little bit about Cazenove Capital and how you support green finance, and I suppose how you integrate green finance into the advice you give to your clients?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. So Cazenove is a wealth manager, and what that means we do is we look after private individuals, families, organisations, and their financial well-being. And to do that, what we do is offer financial advice, planning, managing their investments. So doing that, we're effectively an intermediary in the green finance world. We're sort of connecting private capital, private wealth with businesses, governments, projects that need finance. So what our role is in doing that sort of connecting job, I think it's a really important role, and we basically have three main levers of change. We can choose where we invest. So the first lever of change is what we avoid on behalf of our clients and what we put money into. Climate and nature, as we've heard, provide both enormous risks to our economic system, to the investments that we're making, but also huge opportunities to invest in the businesses of the future, many of whom I'm sure are in this room. Things like renewable energy, green hydrogen, sustainable food, water, forestry, circular economy, etc. The list goes on. And these businesses, I think it's super exciting that these businesses are able to generate both profitable returns for our clients and obviously building a better future. So that's the first lever of change, what we invest in, what we don't invest in. The second role that we play as a manager of individuals, families, wealth is a sort of influencing role. So we are able to influence the companies that we're investing in. We're able to accelerate the transition, accelerate positive change, help companies on that journey towards a more sustainable future. And then the third, and arguably one of the most important roles we play, is that innovation role that we've heard about already. As a connector of capital, how can we innovate to create new markets? How can we create new funds, new solutions, new ways for us to connect that wealth with the places that need it? And I feel really strongly about the opportunity for investing sustainably. It needs to be part of all financial advice offered to everybody. We should be able to easily invest our savings in banks that are ethical and green, our pensions, our ISAs, our investments into sustainable and impact investments. I want to invest in companies that are building a better future, without investing in companies that are putting that future at risk. So that's what we do.